Hi, I'm Pollyanna. I beat 3 of the hardest Cuphead bosses back to back for the first time in under an hour. Oh, who? Well, none other than the Phantom Express, Dr. Kahl's robot, and King Dice. And sorry for the clickbait, because it wasn't easy. Now, I'll be honest, King Dice is the only one I hadn't ever tried, and he took me 50 of those 60 minutes. I had played through all of Aisle 1 and 2 in the past, ultimately dropping the game because I didn't want it to end. But I finally stuck to it, and Aisle 3 did not disappoint. The levels were as difficult as they were appealing, and boy did I die.
Come on, dude.
A lot. I had my behind handed to me. But again, these are the top 3 hardest bosses, according to this random article, and I had pulled some fairly clean wins beforehand. I figured that after all these game ends, surely I could do it again. And apologies for the quality, this was streamed in 720p a while ago. Starting off with number 3, the Phantom Express. Just a note, I'll be showing almost everything just in case anyone gets skeptical, so some parts will be sped up, but you can always check the VODs. Anyway, this absolute menace and its pals in Railroad Wrath gave me a run for their contract, but I can see why it's in 3rd place. The trolley isn't too difficult to maneuver in the first phase if you use the chaser to auto-combat this little pumpkin's shenanigans alongside the blind specter. It's also a lot easier to catch parries if you're going for a perfect score or a quick win at this part. I was still being shy with the stronger weapons, so patience was well within my ability. If anything, I have to note how incredible this song is. The franchise has some fantastic music, but this one really puts the soul in the Soul Train. Next, the 2nd phase, which introduces the conductor of this nightmarish ride. Our pumpkin pal is still making the rounds above, but it's a very simple section. You can be something of a Chad by using the lobber and your hopefully well-trained aim alongside parries to blow through this part. Or stick with the chaser for a simple but slightly extended fight. It becomes a lot easier once you realize that you can rest between the hands. And moving on to the 3rd phase, which moves you into the realm of the lollipop ghouls. The ghouls. You can eliminate one of these fellas quite easily if you've been parrying. But if your parrying game is trash, save the ult you built up earlier for usage right now. If you haven't played or are struggling to get through Cuphead, getting used to parrying early on is a game changer. Either way, taking out one ghoul almost instantaneously makes for a very smooth ride with far more room to dodge the spooks. You're taken into the 4th phase, where the head of the train abandons its dead weight and comes after you like a demonic horse. This is a flame show, with fireballs spewing from the locomotive and an erratic ring of bones that can easily wreck a perfect score. As you'll notice, I unfortunately took a hit seconds before snatching up that contract. But hey, it probably wouldn't have been an A because of my time, which can always be shortened with parrying and a stronger weapon. And I really can't stress this enough, it will improve your gameplay by far. And I won't scoff at a B+ either way, I've got bigger problems. Back to the map. The train's fate had been sealed and we had yet another contract in hand. Fresh off the high of a victory, Mugman celebrated while the freedom to enter Inkwell Hell enticed me to check, full of hope, to see if I could possibly fight King Dice without facing my final boss in Aisle 3. I did a couple of quick searches for bits and bobs that could push me over 100% on this particular save file, and peeked into the casino, only to come face to face with the devil's lackey telling me that I hadn't fulfilled my end of the bargain. So, with a hop and a skipped beat in our hearts, Mugman and I made the trek back to the pile of rubble that mad scientist calls home and prepared ourselves for what could be the most difficult battle of the night. A lot of the other levels took me under 30 minutes to complete. Upon first glance, this was easily the hardest level in the game. I initially let myself get overwhelmed and ended up not paying enough attention to the actual mechanics of number 2, Dr. Kahl's robot. And it seems like that's exactly what Studio MDHR wanted. I struggled with this one. I mean, I'm about to embarrass myself, but I spent 2.5 hours on this level alone, and the majority of that was only within the 1st phase, so it's actually not too crazy that I beat it first try after booting up. Plain levels are already challenging, but Junkyard Jive is unlike any other stage in the game. Funnily enough, it becomes one of the easiest once you figure out how to get through the 1st phase. As you saw, I made quick work of that insanely annoying beam at the top of the automaton's head, then did as much damage as possible to expose his heart. Bombs away on that bad boy, and you can skip the magnet, arm cannons, and homing bombs entirely. You can't tell here, but I am absolutely ecstatic. It was golden skies from this point forward. The second phase is solely the bot's head flying in and out of frame while you dodge those lovely bombs we just avoided. Again, you can either be a cool person that's good at games and actually hit the head, or you can flail like me until it's caught enough strays to move on to the next phase. This one was a break and a time waster in one. Couldn't tell you why I kept going down the path I was on. I mean, really, just use the gun here. Don't use the bombs. In the third phase, Dr. Kahl finally unearths himself from his abomination just to cackle at you while you're desperately maneuvering through a sea of diamond shards. And I'm serious, he's barely steering and the pillars are moving on their own, so he's genuinely just there to make you lose your marbles! Thankfully, I'd become immune to his mockery at this point and just pushed through until he fell. Took a couple of hits in this one, but ended with 2 HP because I always use my extra life charm on plain levels. Little hint if you've never played. This win was a big release of tension, but it didn't feel quite how I thought it would, because it was just another step that allowed me to test my luck at the casino. Despite a merely satisfactory win, I was clearly fired up at this point. Collecting yet another contract with a less than perfect score couldn't faze me. Mugman hopped and hip hooray as I began mentally preparing for what I had heard was the actual hardest fight in the game. There was no dilly-dallying at this point. We just charged, with determination carrying us like a Trojan horse into number 3. King Dice. I had never played this before. Everything was brand new and I was completely starstruck. It was a new vibe, since every other character went on guard the moment you approached. But King Dice? He was calm, cool, collected. His facial expressions, his fluidity, and the music all exuded an intimidating elegance, but the rough pressure was bubbling just below the surface of that evil grin. And by golly, did he have plenty in store for us. All bets really were off, and I honestly made a lot of silly mistakes throughout my first several runs, just because there was so much to look at. The background art and animations were incredible, and the fresh mechanics surrounding this bombardment of bosses really tickled my little gamer brain. There were so many surprises and concepts I hadn't even considered when imagining the paths this battle might take. And then I died for the first time. It felt very abrupt, and I had to take a moment to collect myself, stop doubting my abilities, and remind myself just how far I had come. Then I dove in headfirst. This time, the battle truly began. With yet another tiny hero with infinite lives and endless determination, we were thrust into a world much bigger than the one we knew till now. Despite all the trials we'd faced on this journey, the busy casino life did a great job of making Mugman look and feel like shrimp in the wide open ocean of the real world. This little intimidation tactic did nothing to stop us though, as our eyes were exclusively trained on the prize, giving King Dice a taste of his own medicine. On every run, I stuck to the obvious path of grabbing health and stopping at safe spaces whenever I could, which actually led to me getting a fair amount of practice with the same handful of mini-bosses. This also means that I didn't get to fight all of the available bosses, but more on that later. A side note, every single character has a hilarious defeat animation. I absolutely love all of them, and every game dev ever should incorporate more personality into the depths of their creations, friend and foe alike. As I mentioned earlier, it took me 50 minutes to beat this. 44 of those minutes were spent traveling, talking, resetting, dying, and sighing. I kept my spirits as high as possible while just barely missing the finish line time and time again. Sometimes I flailed and failed in embarrassing fashion, oftentimes when fighting someone I hadn't yet faced, or when trying to pull off a move about which I knew nothing. It still took time to get accustomed to the movement, and I actually wasn't set up properly for a few games because I never changed my plane level settings, so a few late readjustments made this a bit easier to play. Just remember to change those if you're speedrunning or having trouble outside of the designated levels. Now, I wasn't sure about this until doing some research on the characters' names, but there are actually a ton of other characters I never got to see. So follow me here, maybe Twitch, and on Kick if you want to see me beat every single mini-boss and King Dice in one run. I got closer and closer to the end, but every death felt like another few steps in the wrong direction. I was frustrated, knowing that victory was so close, but fearing what would happen when I finally got to the end of the King's Gambit. The stress was getting to me, but we had come too far to quit now. Still, things were unfortunately looking grim when I finally got to fight King Dice with 1 HP to spare. This felt like my last chance. His cards came out to play, I failed my first and only parry and died immediately. I sat there for a moment, just breathing. I thought heavily about taking a break, and despite the frustration, I decided to give it one more go. This would have been me. But it wasn't, because I won that next game. As visibly irritated as I was, my focus was on point. My moves were cleaner and mistakes were quick to be resolved. My first phase was on a heart space against Chips Beddington, an item of utility at the casino that apparently decided to take its rage out on a little old cup like me. But this cup did not come to play games. I walked in with 4 HP, counted my chips, placed my bets, and that sad stack was out of commission in no time at all. My only rest was when the screen went black and I could have a sigh or a groan of relief. No hits. Next phase. Back to King Dice and counting carefully, I snatched myself another heart container. We're at 5 HP and facing Pip and Dot, a couple of dominoes, and a frankly terrifying stage filled with enemies and obstacles out of a gambler's fever dream. But I believed my RNG with the hearts had been good so far, since they only landed on seemingly easy characters. I knocked them out and breathed for the first time in 40 seconds as Dot kicked her apparently useless husband in the face. A bit much, but I was out of there anyway. Still no hits and back to King Dice. I had a clear shot, hit the safe space, hit the heart space, and I did exactly that, hoping for any other enemy to appear other than the one I'd been fighting, Mr. Chimes. Since I didn't realize the same enemies appeared on their respective spots, I accepted my fate and battled it out with a cool 6 HP left. The hitbox of this monk is a little strange, but it gives you a lot of leeway once you realize how small it is. The section is quite simple but long, so you've been spared the monotony. After cruising around in my little plane and knocking that boy out of his boots with the calmness, coolness, and collectedness of King Dice himself, I carefully rolled my die to thin. It was time. I didn't even get a chance to practice this phase, and my ego and desperate need for immersion wouldn't allow me to do any prior research on the impending threat, so I had no idea what to expect past the cards. Almost immediately, I failed 2 parries and dropped to 4 HP. All that no-hit wonder came back to haunt me. Made another miscalculation on my not-so-devastating beam, and hit 3. Thankfully, all it took was a few more chaser shots and King Dice was no more! I could have died right there, but I beat him just in time. And here's my celebration. Did I beat him? No, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Whoa. Super meter 0 out of 6. Did I beat him? I beat him. Oh, zoinks. Was that a bit underwhelming? Yeah, I thought so too. I honestly thought they were gonna throw me for a loop, but they didn't, and I was free to fight the devil. That took me about 1 hour and 20, about 30 of which I had 6 HP because I wanted to finish the game before hanging out with friends and ditching stream. I have to, or I literally won't talk to people in real life. I was surprised that people found it easier than King Dice, but my plays were quirky, to say the least. It got done, but comment and hop into the stream sometime if you want to see me prove that I can beat it on 3 HP like the badass I am. I'm kidding. I mean, I will beat it, but it was not easy by any means. It took a lot of patience to beat the last 2 levels, and they really encapsulate that this game I want to launch my controller into drywall feeling that everyone always talked about. And you know what? That's all I really wanted from this game. A challenge. I've completed the pacifist run and plan to buy the DLC and maybe beat the game on expert mode. Cuphead stole my heart from release, but I never did a serious playthrough until now. The graphics, the music, the sound cues, and all the personality that's been stuffed into this game makes it hard to not love. The visual filters and audio rewards for doing secret tasks are mesmerizing, and as someone who grew up watching Popeye and Betty Boop, this game was everything I wanted it to be and much, much more. I can't wait to see more people suffer through what seemed to be a painstaking development filled with love, dedication, and insane attention to detail from a team that had nothing promised to them, just a beautiful vision. This might sound like a love letter, but Studio MDHR really created something wonderful. If you want to hear more about it, watch the linked video. And here's the surprise. I won't spoil the entire thing, so I appreciate everyone who watches this video, but especially those of you who've watched this far. Since this is my first real video, and I've wanted to do this for a very, very long time. Make sure to pop by the streams for a laugh while I struggle, or check out the VODs for a peek at what I do, since they look quite different now. And don't worry, I stream at 1080p now. If you have any games you'd like to see, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'm Pollyanna, take care of yourself, and thank you for watching. Bye.